Awesome. So, like I said, my name is Kendra Moss. I'm the program manager here at the Los Padres Forest Association. And this is our speaker series um, with Brian Sarvis talking about the Condor Trail. We're so excited to have Brian here tonight. We're going to introduce him here quickly. But before we do, I just wanted to take a few moments to acknowledge the original inhabitants of the Los Padres National Forest, the indigenous peoples on whose ancestral homelands we're gathered here tonight. Throughout the Los Padres, that includes the Chumash, the Salinan, the Esselen, the Tataviam, and the Costanoan people. And we respect their sovereignty and right to self-determination and would like to honor their sacred connection to the land as the original inhabitants and stewards of what is now designated as the Los Padres National Forest. And with that, I also wanted to just take a few moments to talk briefly about some upcoming events that we've got going on. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. We're really excited that we're able to host some events again in person. And one of those coming up is going to be our used gear sale. So let me share that with everyone so you can see. Our used gear sale is coming up on Saturday, November 6th at Tucker's Grove Park. It'll be from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. and we are also currently seeking donations. So if you've got some used gear that is just sitting in your closet, we'd love to have it. We're happy to come get it and give it to a new home. So we hope to see you there. And now I'm going to turn it over to our Executive Director, Brian Conant.
Hi, everyone. You hear me okay? All right. Hey, Kendra, is there any chance you can throw the Condor Trail logo up real quick? Show you guys a neat little trick. All right, there we go. So some of you may know this, some may not, but this logo was designed by a friend of ours named Mike Powers, and he's professional designer. He did a really cool thing. If you look at the inside, the portion underneath the wings, it might look a little familiar. It's actually the coastline of California along the Condor Trail, and then flipped in reverse. So you can see the Channel Islands out there. You guys can marvel at that and amaze your friends throughout the rest of your life here. So we were talking on Zoom because you don't get any reactions and the jokes don't exactly work out well. But anyway, that's the tidbit there of the Condor Trail. So you can send it back to me, Kendra. Me and Sarvis, I think we call us Conant and Sarvis. That might work best, especially if you have questions. But I'm going to help facilitate and talk to Brian a little bit during this conversation about his book, which I'll get to here in a second. But LPFA, we've been around since 1979. A nonprofit partner of the forest. We focus on getting people out in the forest, maintaining trails, and making sure that people are enjoying their time safely and responsibly while in the forest. We've been doing a lot of work of late, and we have a lot of work coming up. A few of the trails that we're going to be working on over the coming 6 to 8 months. The Santa Cruz Trail will continue to hack away at Santa Cruz Trail here in Santa Barbara. Indian Creek and the Dick Smith Wilderness. Sulphur Spring Trail, which is going to be one of the main access points to Manzana this coming year, with Naira being temporarily closed. The Red Reef Trail, we'll be working on that in the Sespe Wilderness. And then a few trails along the Condor Trail as well, Alder Creek and the Sespe, Santa Barbara Canyon, and Potholes. We also got a real exciting grant just recently. We were awarded a grant from the Santa Barbara Foundation, and we'll be working on all the trails on the north side of Figueroa Mountain. So we've got a lot of work to do, and at this point in time, we're just hoping we can get back there sooner rather than later and get started on all this great trail work. Another quick update is Hike Los Padres. We also help maintain and manage Hike Los Padres along with the web designer, a guy named John Ziegler. And we're starting some updates, some pretty aggressive updates very soon. And so if any of you are interested in helping with the updates, we're going to be redoing all the camp descriptions, all the trail descriptions, basically going over every piece of information within Hike Los Padres. If any of you are interested in helping out, just email us info@lpforest.org and we'll get you going on that. So that's real exciting that the website's been around, I think 6 years now, and it hasn't had a full update since then. So we're real excited about getting going on that. So enough about that. Let's get to the main show, which is Brian Sarvis. So I've been working with the Condor Trail Foundation, the association, for about 15 years now. And we've been kind of helping push people along the trail, getting people out there. It's been real exciting. We had our first thru hiker complete the trail, I believe, in 2015. And since then, we've had a few more. Hot off the presses here is a book, the Condor Trail Guidebook. And this is what Brian will be talking about, Brian Sarvis, this evening. And I'm so excited about this book. And I'm sure all of you will as be excited about it as well. We'll share some information about where you can get your hands on it. But Brian has some great stories to share about his time exploring the Condor Trail, hiking it. I'm not going to go into too much detail. But again, we're real excited to have Brian on board. And without further ado, Brian, are you with us?
I'm with you, and I'm so glad to get that book done. In fact, my friends are even more glad because now I'll quit talking about it all the time. Oh, you're frozen.
So Brian, I know you have a slideshow, a little presentation you're going to give here in a few minutes, but I thought I'd ask you a few questions first. How
Sure.
long have you been working on this book? What is the length? What's your time frame that you've been working on this book for?
Well, I started hiking in 2017, and I immediately saw the need to provide some direction because on this trail, it's easy to get lost. There are places where you can't find water. So I was thinking about some of those things specifically that you'd find in a guidebook. I hiked it again as a through hike in 2019. And I did a lot of research just on the background of Los Padres Forest Association, a lot of other things. So I provide information about which maps are the best maps to use, just a lot of things right up front before you get to the actual guide.
And would you call yourself a writer who happened to hike or a hiker who happened to write?
A hiker who happened to write.
And was it more fun to hike or more fun to write?
Well, you know, all of life is a learning experience. So the things I learned on the trail were really important things. And the things I learned in writing the book, I think were equally important. So I can't put one above the other.
How about time? Which took more time?
Oh, it took a lot more time to write the book than to hike the trail. You know, the first time I went through as a section hike, and it took me 34 days in total. The second time I went the other direction and went through as a continuous through hike, it took 34 days in total. Well, it's taken a lot more time to format the book.
Sure. And what was your introduction to Los Padres? Are you from this part of California, or how did you first get introduced?
I've been in the Santa Barbara area for the last 20 years. I used to do big mountains and 700 miles on the Appalachian Trail, John Muir Trail. I was doing a lot of the wilderness, Steve Roper route, Sierra High route. Although, you know, now with all the summer smoke and then the winter snow, it's hard to find a time to get up in the Sierras when it's really ideal. When I read an article in the Independent here in Santa Barbara many years ago, I think it was maybe 15 years ago, I was just amazed that there might be a distance trail right here in our own backyard. And I quickly discovered that it's not right here in our own backyard, it's deep into our own backyard. But I just read everything I could about it whenever it came out. Then when Brittany Nielsen hiked it, here it had been laid out in the late 90s or mid 90s, excuse me. And when Brittany Nielsen hiked it in 2015, then that was the obvious gun start. It was obvious that we needed to get out there and do that trail.
Absolutely. We were happy to see you on that trail. I know after Brittany, there were a few people who attempted to through hike and section hike the Condor Trail, but there's been more failures than successes, I think. So maybe your book will change that around a little bit.
Well, I've recounted some of the successes. I didn't get all the failures, but I've talked to people who say things like, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm determined to do the trail. And then they'll get out there and they'll say, oh my gosh, there's so much brush and oh, there are ticks and there's poison oak and, who've just quit. But I think that's part of the challenge.
Mm-hmm. Well, are you ready to dive into your presentation?
Sure. Let me do a little slideshow. I'll take about 20 minutes of your time. Let me go to share screen here and see what I have. Well, I'm not sure that I'm clicking the right things.
If you go down to your Photos app, you should be able to, there you go.
There should be this one right here.
The green button. Oh,
whoops.
Go back.
Whoopsie. Here, let me slide this down. Let's slide this down. I don't want to turn anything off. There's Kendra. There.
I think if you open up the Photos app one more time.
I'll just do that. Thank you.
You're welcome. And then that green button there.
Yeah, I don't have a green button on this one.
Upper left corner.
Let's see, I'll have to move this down. There we go. Okay, there we go. Well, let me go through and highlight a few things. I'm excited about this trail. I think it's just a great adventure hiking this trail. I need to move the top view here so that I can click the side button. Now I can move this out of the way. There we go. Okay, good. This trail is over 400 miles. There are trails, but there are places where there's no trail, and it allows you to be an explorer. Most of it is in wilderness. It goes through 7 different wilderness areas, and it goes through the parts that are deepest into the forest and the parts that are most or farthest away from the roads and from the towns. Now, it'll run through areas that are wilderness areas. It'll run through the California coastal mountain ranges and canyons, along wild and scenic rivers, along wild sanctuaries. And there are almost no people around. And that's some of the magic of this trail. And the next person you tell about the trail, tell them not to tell anything about it, because we don't want a lot of people out there. I've spent as many as 4 days or 5 days out on the trail and not seen a soul. When Brittany Nielsen hiked the trail in 2015, she said that she saw maybe 20 people in total on the trail. Well, I've had my share of long distance hikes and exploration, but This one was different. This is more of an epic adventure. And to me, it was a seductress, but it was also a demon. It's not an easy trail. It's not like walking on a path in a park. Some of the Condor trails are well-defined and clear of brush, but others are sometimes overgrown. And you can appreciate chaparral when you have to fight your way through it. You can appreciate what that chaparral has gone through, and especially in a trail where those bushes are working hard to reclaim any available sources of sunlight. So something like this is just a beautiful, beautiful path. But as you go along and you imagine in places where you'd have to look up on the mountaintop, can you see my cursor on this? Yes? Okay, good. Look up on the mountaintop and just figure, well, I'm going to have to find my own way up this ridge and just work my way through the brush to get to that mountain top. Then it's a little bit more of a challenge. In places, the trail just means following a creek. In fact, this is the trail. It goes right up through here. It goes around that rock and on up into that canyon. Last time I was through there, it's pretty well overgrown. So this looked pretty tame to me when I looked at it. And in places, the trail just plain disappears. In fact, in places, there's just no trail at all. You can look around. You don't see any place where people have gone before. You might see some places where coyotes and bears have gone, but you know, they're pretty low riding animals. And as Brian Conant says, you're not bushwhacking until you're crawling. And we've done that plenty on this trail, done plenty of crawling. You can appreciate the chaparral here. In fact, the trail goes right off through here. And appreciate what the chaparral has gone through to hang on to this tenuous life, develop or gain what nutrients they can from the soil, what sunlight they can get. And that's why as you push your way through, this is why I wear long sleeves, I wear long pants. I notice Brian Conant wears gaiters. I mean, I wear armor for this trail. It's not like the other trails where you can walk along in your shorts. We took a look at this map very briefly, but I want to show you a couple things on the map. In fact, I'm going to start from the south. You can go from the north up here near Carmel, or you can go down, start from the south at Lake Piru down near Castaic. It really doesn't matter. It's a great trail in both directions, but I'm going to go south to north. There's about a 60-mile stretch here between Lake Piru and Highway 33. Well, that's a good resupply point, or that's a good section hike. You can do that in what, some 4 or 5 days. There's a 110-mile stretch between here and Highway 166. Another about 60-mile stretch between Highway 166. By the way, crossing Highway 166 is the hardest part of the trail. It's the most dangerous. There are big, fast-moving cars along there. Nothing that fierce on the trail. But when you get up to Highway 101, there's an underpass that the Pacific Railroad built for us just to get under the highway, and then you continue on. And notice the National Forest has a southern part here, whoops, and it stops at about this point, and then it picks up at the northern part way up here past San Simeon. So between Cayucas and San Simeon, you have about a 40-mile stretch where you have to go to the coast. You have to hike the beaches and bluffs, and then you're able to climb up into the mountains, follow the ridge top along the Santa Lucia Range, and get into the Ventana Wilderness to end at Bottcher's Gap. Well, I like to set up food canisters about every 50 miles and bury them and put a rock on top. Then when I get to them, I take the rock off, I unbury the food canister, and I've got another 5 days of food. It's a great way to go. I use a little plastic bucket, 2-gallon plastic bucket. And then I run around afterwards and gather them all up from the hole that I put them back in. I want to talk to you about some of the features. I'll highlight various features. In fact, we'll start down here on the grassy slopes that lead up the Potholes Trail down near Lake Piru. The first time I went, there was so much grass you couldn't even find the trail. Second time I went, there was a pretty well-defined trail, and I think Potholes is getting a lot more use now. As you get up in the chaparral, and there's a lot of chaparral. In fact, about 2/3 of this trail is chaparral. And I think Alan Coles said it best. He was the originator of the idea of the Condor Trail when he said that this is really a complex pygmy forest. And I think it's pretty unappreciated. You know, we see chaparral as sort of troublesome or fire prone, but in fact, it's amazing stuff for what it's able to accomplish. The trail going through here is fairly well defined. The trail on the next page gets a little grown in. In fact, the chaparral can grow a trail in just a couple of years. And then you're pushing through, just arms up in front of your face, pushing through that chaparral. And if it's wet at all, then you're going to be wet. There are also plenty of areas where you find a lot of grassy hillsides dotted by oak trees. And these are just beautiful hiking areas, whether there's a trail or not. Sometimes you can even find water in those areas. But I particularly like to start in the south and follow the wildflowers up, because these hillsides and the meadows are just loaded with wildflowers. In fact, I think the ideal time to start is about March, when there's the most water around, and probably finish up then in April, or start in April and finish up by the end of or in May. And the flowers have it right. They know that the season to be out there finding love is the spring, when there's plenty of water. And it's a good lesson for us, because these wildflowers know that it's going to be a long, dry summer and a long, dry fall. And there are places along the trail where you'll have to carry water 10 miles or 17 miles just during the rainy parts of the year. But by starting in March, when there's a lot of water, well, in fact, there are sometimes when there's flooding going on too, so you have to avoid some parts of the trail. But by starting in March, I think it's pretty ideal, because you see a lot of these wildflowers just all over the place. And the south dries out faster than the north section does. You also get to these wonderful mountain islands that are covered with conifers, with great rock formations, and they're just most wonderful things. They're islands in the middle of the chaparral, and they can get up to 6,000-7,000 feet. And of course, in March or earlier in the year, you often find snow at those elevations. I had to tromp this trail right through here a couple of times so that you could see on the photo that there is actually a trail through there. It's no big deal, I think, to run into a little bit of snow. A couple of feet of snow, it may be more difficult. Maybe the trail has disappeared altogether, but after all, you're following a ridge top, and you can go 4 miles on a ridge top without a trail. If you have to post hole too much, it may be a struggle. You'll have wet feet and you'll have cold feet, but the idea of just walking in snow that we see dramatized in movies isn't often so dangerous as it would seem. Later, as you get up north, you're hiking on the ridgetop up over the Pacific Ocean, and it's just beautiful. There are a lot more established trails in this area. You can see a trail. In fact, here's a good resupply trail that comes up from one of the state parks along Highway 1 up to us. And then since you're on the ridge top where there isn't any water, you have the opportunity on this trail to dive down into these beautiful redwood canyons. This happens to be a fairy circle that's right along the trail. When I stepped into this, I was looking up, taking the pictures, and I didn't realize there was a beehive in it that was guarding the thing. And I spent most of 2 days hiking with one eye closed. Water, wild and scenic rivers, the Sespe, the Sisquoc, the upper reaches of the Big Sur. And of course, there are little canyons all over the place. There's a lot of water if you go the right time of year. And notice that this has been scoured out. If you look from vegetation to vegetation, you know that floods move through this area and scour out and also eliminate part of the trail. So you have to be aware of where the trail might be headed. Usually goes straight across. This is the Agua Blanca. This is the trail. And this, by the way, is also your water source. And which brings up the subject of sanitation, because it's your responsibility to keep the wilderness pristine. We drink the water. That's why we have these national forests in the first place. It's not so we'll have wood to log. It's so that we'll have fresh drinking water in the communities that are below the national forest. Here are some of the waterfalls in Big Falls Canyon. And this is often a place where you'll find people hanging out in the swim holes, jumping off the rocks. Usually Cal Poly students are in that area. And when you get to this, try this line out. It never fails. Oh, hi, I've been hiking 200 miles. Oh my gosh, you have beer, don't you? It never fails. You always score a beer. In that middle part, you are forced to hike the beach and the bluff tops. And this is surprisingly underpopulated. You know, most people hang out near Cayucas, the town, or up by Moonstone Beach up in Cambria. And other than watching the elephant seals, there are not many people along the beaches or on the bluff tops. Now, you do have to share it with 30,000 elephant seals and their 6,000 new pups, which is also a great reason to hike in the spring. You know, the quick wean of these pups is only 1 month, and 1 month after their birth, the mothers will leave and they have to get in the water, figure out how to find food. And by the way, you often see an occasional zebra, courtesy of the Hearst Ranch. Now, what other distance trail gives you elephant seals and zebras? The trail hits the beach just at Morro Rock, just north of Morro Rock, and continues north. But Morro Rock's just a good example of the kind of geological features that you find along the trail, which are just outstanding. These pancake sort of rocks are in an area called Stone Corral. And you can just imagine the sedimentation and the erosion that would reveal that sort of a pattern. Of course, the history of our area geologically is a history of uplift, fold, crack, erode, erode, erode. And we are the recipients of that magic. We get to see what's inside. And you find marine fossils in some of these. You never find any dinosaur fossils. These were laid down long after the dinosaurs were gone. Piedra Blanca, and many of you have seen these formations. Here's Devil's Gateway. There are a number of narrows, whether they're canyons around Año Nuevo Deal, or whether it's big narrows, or here, Devil's Gateway. This is down where Sayer McNeil has a place. I see you, Sayer. Hi. And up in the Santa Lucia wilderness, you will find, if you hike in the spring, you'll find newts all over the place. They're out looking for love too. No fools. You may find some leprechauns here. I can't believe how green the greens are up near the sulfur pots. And these are helpful things. You know, they take their little tails and they say, here, come and look at me. I'm over here, I'm over here. So we of course, all rush over to look at them. Ask Brian Conant about stepping on them, but we rush to look at them. And if you have a dog, then your dog wants to sniff them and can get bit. But my veterinarian daughter says, yeah, we give serum to dogs all the time that are foaming at the mouth and they look like they're going to die, but no, we can bring them out. And of course, we're always looking for condors. Now, these condors have an amazing eyesight. I quickly discovered that they can't read because they don't stay inside the condor sanctuary. So maybe we need to make bigger signs or something like this. I got these pictures from Friends of Condors, Wild and Free. You can see the pattern under the wings. Here's the map of the California coastline here. I don't see the Channel Islands, but in the book, I show very clearly the difference between what a condor would look like and what a turkey vulture would look like, because most people think those turkey vultures are condors. Now, I haven't seen many of these. You might see them at the beginning, at the end, but you could see them anywhere. And Chris Danch, who collaborated with Alan Coles on the early development of the trail, describes how noisy these birds can be in flight. In fact, he contrasts the silent flight of an owl with the flight just overhead of a condor. You know, they don't have to be silent since their prey is already dead. And he says, it sounds like a jet engine by comparison. Hot springs along the trail. This is the Sespe Hot Springs. Many of you have been there. The water up at the high end is god awful hot. A little cold water comes into it. So this is, well, it's not even, it's not even less than burning hot for me. It starts to cool off even more here, more cold water coming in. And about the fifth pool down, then I'm in that pool fully clothed. I've been back and forth on the river anyway. You know, a lot of my clothes are wet and very dirty. And the last time I was there were 40 bighorn sheep right on the cliff above me, kicking down stones. So someone has a great biology project going. I noticed there are collars on some of them, but they seem to hang around this area. They seem to like it. The hot spring sheep. Native artifacts. You know, to have the knowledge of the natives, of the people who lived here for thousands of years would be just a wonderful thing. I mean, they developed these first trails. They used these trails. They lived in this area. You find their rock art. Now, the trail won't take you right to the rock art. You'll have to explore a bit. But if you look under things, you'll find some of that rock art. And if you look in these formations, you'll find evidence, usually in terms of rock art. As I recall, there was a basket, a 200-year-old basket that was found here not too long ago. And in fact, I've found native artifacts. Here's a mano matate stone used to grind things. Notice it's very different from these other stones that are on this hilltop. And by the way, it's still there. I didn't touch it. I revisit it every time I go through. And when you hike through, you better leave it there. Of course, I'm a sucker for heart-shaped rocks. I'm known for coming back from a hike with 6 pounds of heart-shaped rocks. Enough said. Historically, there are evidence of people who homesteaded, especially in the Siskiyou, You find their gravestones there, their chimneys, and these over 100 families had a little school, Manzana Schoolhouse, where the kids would cross the river to go to school. The teacher lived with one of the families. The kids couldn't go to school during the wetter parts of the year because they couldn't get across the river. So they went to school all summer long. Talk a little more about the trail. In a lot of places, the trail is really well defined. In other places, you just work your way up through the rocks, up the canyon. There might be some vestige of a trail up on the side, but not very often in some of these areas. Here's a place where the trail comes right up through this little stream bed. Notice these are all different streams. Here the trail goes right up over these 5-foot boulders. You can't go around. There's poison oak guarding the sides. So you just have to throw yourself up on that rock and climb up over that stone as the trail. Here's a place where the trail runs up, crosses this stream. This is up in the Santa Lucia wilderness again. And the stream crossings, I think the trail crosses the stream something like over 100 times. And that was just in one day's count. And I didn't go the whole distance one day, so I finished off the next day. But you'll have wet feet. There will be a number of days of having wet feet. Up north, I had an interesting experience with wet feet. I was hiking out in rain, and in fact, there was a little too much rain. The river up in that area was in brown mud swirling floodwater, and I could not get across the river. So I'd worked my way down this terrible little canyon that was wiped out, where the trail was wiped out by a fire. I worked my way back up and worked my way through chaparral along the ridge around, and had spent a couple days doing that. I was already a little bit low on food. I came up on a mountain lion. I hiked up over a little hill, and there was a mountain lion about 15 feet in front of me digging around under a bush. The mountain lion jumped up and it turned and ran. Then it ran down the hillside, and I could not believe how big this animal was. You know how sometimes you'll see a big dog and you get up real close to it. Oh my gosh, this thing is the size of a horse. Well, this mountain lion seemed like the size of a horse to me. So when I got up to that point, I uncharacteristically gave a warrior yell and threw a couple little rocks into the brush. I didn't want it to think I was some meek little deer walking along. And that night it started to rain, and it rained and it rained. And every raindrop that would hit the tent would hit the condensation on the inside and splash all over me. And I knew that the next 2 days I'd be walking in snow. I had buried a food canister up on a hillside. Well, I hadn't buried it. I couldn't bury it in the snow. So I put it in a little cave and put a couple of stones up there. And I had a talk with myself. I said something like, you know, Brian, you need to just buck up here. You need to toughen up. You've been colder, you've been wetter, so you're a little low on food. You've walked in snow before. You need to become that warrior. And that was enough to get me geared up to finish the next 300 miles. I dug out my phone immediately, and I sent my resolve to my wife as a text message. And I think she was already home from hiking the community Santiago, where she could enjoy a glass of wine every night. So she could have rescued me, but you know how if you advertise your resolve to them, sometimes you're more apt to pull it off. The next morning, fortunately, everything had turned to ice. So I didn't have rain pouring down on me all night, and it actually kept me drier. But you know what it's like when you put your tent poles and your stakes away, and your hands don't work anymore, and you have to put them in your pockets or under your arms to get them going. Well, that got me going. Now, the first year I went up, I couldn't do a full hike. I had to do section hikes because of the floods and because the Soberanus fire had burned out some of the northern area. And just like now, there are fire areas where it's closed because people foolishly, camp under trees that are burned out and will fall on them, things like that. So I waited until there was an opening. And I had a 4-day window before the rains came. Now, this is January of the year. The area was suddenly open. And while you're looking at these pictures of some of my favorite camping spaces, I'll just tell you the story. I had an opening to get this hike done, but I spent way too many hours in this darn little canyon where there was no trail. It's only a 2.5 mile canyon, and I must have spent 6, maybe 8 hours. I finally sort of gave up. I went on all fours up the mountainside. I found another trail that ran along the ridge, and on that trail, then I hiked on down, and it started raining. And it rained hard. I mean, the next day, the wind was blowing, the rain was just pouring at me. I had branches blowing down on me. I'm all bundled up with my face almost covered, so I could hardly see. I didn't dare bring out my phone for anything. And I knew that the trail, once I got to Devil's Peak, I knew that trail went south. So I went up through the woods to Devil's Peak, and I circled Devil's Peak. I went down the other side, and I ran into a sign, and it was the same camp that I had seen hours earlier before I started up the mountain. So I realized my error. At first, I thought foolishly, oh, there must be 2 Cummings camps. Ha, ha, ha. So I ran back up in the rain. I got out my phone, I got my bearings, figured out how to get down, and I made it out to the end of the trail on the run. I got into, I had stashed a car there, and then I Ubered down to the Big Sur coast. I got to Bottcher's Gap, pulled my phone out, took my quick picture. There I am. You notice how my face is so closed in here, I can't hardly see anything else. And I drove home that night, only to discover that the same storm cell had wiped out Montecito that very night. So the flooding and the debris flow in Montecito happened the same night I got home. And I was glad that I was home in bed, but people we knew died. The dangers of staying home. Well, when Brittany Nielsen did her final section, she was about done with the trail. And in fact, I've recounted a number of stories in the book, and I got a great quote from Brittany Nielsen. And I'd like to read you what she sent to me about the end of the trail. She said, there was a point at the end. She says, I was mentally and physically drained, and my heart wasn't in it anymore. I had a few bars on my phone, and I called Brian Conant. He answered, and he said, hello, Britt, you there? I didn't say anything. I was totally out of breath, and I was just bawling, tears streaming down my face. After a moment, he said something I'll never forget. He said, Britt, I know you can't see the finish line. He paused, and I was just crying, but I can see it for you. I hung up. Excuse me. I hung up without saying anything, still bawling, and I started literally running. And she says that I more or less ran the entire last section. So she made it out. and came back to tell us the story of her adventure. Dangers on the trail. You would think that a bear with a size 13 paw might be a danger, but the bears back there are so shy. I can't even get my camera out fast enough to take a picture of them. They just run off so quickly. Now, here's a serious danger. If you've ever been to Manzana Schoolhouse, for the last 5 years at least, this poison oak is growing right there where the pit latrine is, and that's probably the most serious danger along the trail. In fact, I have severe problems with poison oak, and I want you to see this little video. I'm walking along in a stream. I'm looking for a place to go over on the bank so that I can find what I think is the trail over on the bank. Well, this stuff goes on for miles, and I've tried eating it. I've tried everything. I think this is the biggest, most ferocious animal in the forest. And I will tell you that I am so cautious. When I see poison oak, I simply back up. I find another way to go. I did the last 400 miles without getting bitten once. Of course, we do have our own dangers, our own foolishness. Well, I love this trail. I plan to spend a lot more time on it. I put the book together so other people could find their way, could find water, and enjoy being out in this wilderness. You know, I don't find any solitude out here. To me, I'm just part of what's going on. I feel pretty much at one with the things, and now I've learned to identify more bird sounds, and now I'm even quieter. I see more animals. You know, few people are quiet enough to see a lot of animals, especially if they're talking to one another. So I put this book out, and again, my friend happy that I'll now quit talking about the trail. Just say, oh, here, I'll give you a copy of the book. So I'll give this back to you. Stop share. How's that?
Wonderful presentation. Yes, I see lots of applauses. I would love to echo that. Amazing photos, such great stories. It sounds like you've had some wonderful adventures and plan to have many more. So now we're going to open it up for a Q&A. So if folks have questions, please go ahead and put them into the chat box. I will read them out. Keith, yes, such good photos. And I'm going to start off with some questions that we've come up with for you, Brian. Do you think that people need a GPS to complete the trail?
Yeah, I think people need a GPS, and I think people need good maps. And the book has 12 maps in it, but you know, these maps are only 7 inches wide. So you can't hike the trail based on maps. You can see on a real map, on a Brian Conant map or Tom Harrison map or a Green Trail map, and you can see the ones I've identified as the best maps. You can see where you can follow the trail on those maps. I think a GPS is essential. And the Condor Trail.com website has the KML files that you can download right onto your GPS. So for example, I use a Gaia GPS just right on my cell phone. I can put it in airplane mode and save the battery for days and days, and just dig it out whenever I need to find where I'm going. And there are some places on the trail where I'm digging it out every 15 minutes, because if you get off the trail, you can easily be off the trail by a quarter of a mile, 15 minutes later, and a half a mile, and then a mile, and then you're stuck backtracking. Yes.
Awesome. Great to know. Does your book include resupply points and recommendations for where to resupply?
It sure does. So if you want to resupply, it shows the paved road resupplies, and then it shows some of the intermediate resupply points that you could get to easily. And then you could use that also for your section hikes. So if you only wanted to do 4-day hikes, Mikey did the whole trail as a section hike, and he did a number of just 2-day hikes. He did some other 3 and 4-day hikes. He even did a 6-day hike. Yeah, you can use this. In fact, I've got this, well, I think I have it figured out so that I can do a resupply every 45, 50 miles, 55 miles. And I think it's pretty easy. But yeah, that's part of figuring out a trail. You spend a lot of time in advance. And I think you need to take trail maps, paper trail maps along with you too, just as a backup.
Mm-hmm. We've got one more question about resupplying while we're on that topic. Is there a way to resupply without burying it? Can you go to stores and such, or are there places other things you can do?
Well, when I did when I wrote the book, I wanted someone to be able to fly in from the East Coast to take a shuttle up to the start of the trail to supply themselves from the little store in the little town of Piru and start out, and then get to Piedra Blanca and find somebody to haul them 20 miles into town, into Ojai, where they can go to the Vaughn store. So I've got all these kinds of things in the book. But that said, it's hard to resupply just on the run. This is not a trail that's as easy, even as the Pacific Crest Trail, in terms of resupply. I would advise you to get about 6 little canisters, little 2-gallon canisters, and go around, hit these resupply points, walk in. I walked in with a set of post hole diggers and I popped a little hole in the ground near a post, uphill from the post, where I knew I'd be able to find it, found the right rock to put over it. You don't have to bury them very deep. I mean, just an inch down. And that way it's sealed. The only other way is to have someone meet you with resupply. And that's a possibility, but you have to communicate with those people. And there are a lot of places where you just don't have any cell phone communication. In fact, I've identified those places too. But there are some other places where, heck, as you go along up above San Luis Obispo, you could take out your phone, you can order a pizza at the trailhead. So there are other places where you can do things like that.
I'm so glad you covered that, Brian, because that was my next question. How's the cell service, and do you discuss that in your book?
It's poor. It's very poor. And there are only a couple places. Well, for instance, on a couple mountaintops where you overlook Fort Hunter Liggett, well, you have cell phone reception. If you go up Medulce Mountain, which is a side trip, you can often get cell phone reception, but most of the trail just doesn't have any cell reception. I use a little inReach. I've used a Rescue Link, I've used Spots, but I've gone to a little inReach, which used to be a Delorme. Now it's a, oh gosh, who's the company that does all the mapping? Oh, I forget. Anyway, REI sells them, inReach, and you can pull out your phone and you can Bluetooth right into the little inReach satellite device, and you can send text messages. So I spend a chunk of the evening just sending text messages. In fact, I use that since I hike alone. Then my wife wants to know, so where are you for lunch? Where are you for the night? So I just push the little preset button that says, just checking in, I'm doing fine, or just checking in, I'm having trouble with the trail, I'm probably behind schedule or I'm ahead of schedule, I have a couple of presets. And then she can take out her phone, get the text message, she can push the button on the text, and she can see right where I am on a topo map. She can also use her fingers, open it up, and see where I am on a satellite, on a Google satellite photo. Now, she can't see me there because the photo was taken 4 months earlier, but but she'll see the tree I'm standing next to.
Well, that's great. Couple more questions here from the chat box. Was the hike wetter than the Milford track? Matthew.
No. No. I think it rained all the time in New Zealand. That's funny. Hi, Matt.
Back to the question on food storage. Did you have any problems with rodents?
No, not at all. Now, I will say I don't like to camp in campsites because, you know, the little rodents are sometimes attracted to where people gather. And in fact, I suppose the big ones are too. Well, you only see bears around campgrounds in the Sierras. You don't see them up above at 10,000 feet. There's nothing to eat up there. But no, I never had any problems with little rodents. In fact, I use a Z-Pax tent and I completely unzip both sides. I just use it as cover for the night, and I like the air to blow through it. Nothing ever comes in. I've never had any problems with any of my food. Not at all.
That is great. Going through some more questions from the chat box. Does the route cross or come near any private property, or is it all a public trail?
It does. There are a couple of private land holdings just along the way. And I've described that and told you, where to watch out for things and what would be easiest. But in fact, the trail is designed to avoid this private property because we want to respect those holdings. That said, there are folks out there working on getting public ownership over some of these who've done a lot of good work for us.
Mm-hmm. And were there any road walking sections?
There are places where you do have to walk on a dirt road. Yes.
Okay, great. Another question here from Paul Cronshaw. Do you have any favorite gear or gear failures?
Yes, actually, Paul, the Gossamer gear backpack. It was Paul who turned me on to that. And those black diamond poles that are carbon fiber are just great. I like things small. I like things light. Now, I'm not a Paul Cronshaw, but my pack weight is down to just 15 pounds. But food is the heavy thing. And if you do have to carry water for 10 miles or 17 miles, then we're talking about 2 pounds for every quart or every liter. And food costs me for about 4,500 calories. It costs me 2 pounds. So I might pack my pack with 35 pounds, including food and water. And then every day it gets 2 pounds lighter. So you just keep going.
Yeah. Did you get a trail name while you were on the Condor Trail?
No, well, I hadn't seen any people out there, but from hiking the Appalachian Trail, hi Chris, they named me Flosser Manjaro. Guess what I did when I was just walking along on flat land, poles under my arms, flossing my teeth and talking about all the times we've been up Kilimanjaro. It's part of part of my love story with my wife is climbing Kilimanjaro.
Oh, that's so sweet. How long did it take you to complete the Condor Trail, and how fast do you think it could be completed?
Well, that's an interesting one. Brittany did it in 37 days. I did it in 34 days, both as a section hike and as a through hike. When Patrick, the other two, Justin Kennedy had done it, but Justin and Monica's dogs, we had an LPFA trail talk, and Justin and Monica talked about their experience on the trail. They took some trail dogs who were just amazing trail dogs, but the dogs got eventually injured, both dogs, and they had to pull off the trail. Then they came back and finished. I don't know how long that one took, but then as a gift for his daughter for college graduation, he took Elena on the trail, and Justin told me, he said, now we're going to go real slow. We're going to have resupplies. After 2 days, we'll have a resupply. And then 2 days, we'll have another resupply. And they planned on 45 days to do the whole hike. Well, in fact, they did it in fewer than 45 days. And then Patrick White went through with Alyssa, and Patrick did it in about that time. I have it in the book, but it's something like 30 days, something like that. This is not a speed trail, though. I mean, you won't find Scott Jurek trying to do this at 50 miles a day. And it's because you have to stop and find your way. You have to fight through brush. And I imagine a Brian Conant could probably do it in just 3 weeks' time. I mean, he's awesome out there on the trail. But I'm an old, slow guy. I just walk 10 hours a day. I don't even stop for lunch. You saw the picture of me. I put a feed bag under my chin and I work out of it all day long. I'm not going back in my backpack during the day. I'm just feeding out of that. But I'd say maybe 3 weeks, but still I'd plan on about 35 days, I think.
That's great. And do you know how many people have finished the trail?
Yeah, I just gave you their names.
I lost count there.
Along with Sean Miner Nordine and Mike Mackey. And I think that's it. I think we've covered everyone. It's amazing to me that this trail was laid out in the 90s. It was first hiked in 2015. And now today, still only a handful of people have hiked the whole thing that we know of. Maybe there's someone out there. I talked to Matt Inman, who early on had taken people on the trail and done 100-mile segments. He had taken 7th and 8th graders, but then he didn't get to do the coastal area because, well, it wasn't a real, wilderness trail.
Yeah.
And of course, Brittany did it.
Could you talk a little bit more about the detail of the beach section there? Jesse Rodriguez is curious to know more details about that.
Well, once you come down Highway 41, and it's proposed that would be routed off the highway from Cerro Alto, the last campground, you hit some stores just as you go under the Highway 1 at Morro Rock. So there's stores there. I've even stopped at the Motel 6. They said, we'll take a resupply box here, just a little, the kind of box you'd take to the post office and send a resupply in. And you walk 10 miles up the beach, get to, and that's the Strand. It's a broad beach, almost no one on it. You get to Cayucas. Cayucas has a public restroom. It's interesting to me that once you get to a populated area, then all of a sudden you don't have places to go to the bathroom or places even to get water, but they have a public restroom in Cayucas. You can stay on a number of bluff tops north of Cayucas. There's one place where you have to, at Harmony Beach, you have to get back on the highway and hike along the highway a little ways until you get to the south end of Cambria. Then you can go back out through the preserve there. I forget the name of that preserve. Someone will know it. Peretti? Anyway, and that takes you down to the beach. Cambria itself is inland, so there's no resupply there. So you need to have your resupply available. And past Cambria, then you get to a state park. Well, that state park, the San Simeon Hurst State Park, has hike and bike spots. And that's for people to squeeze in who don't have a car and who are on bikes going up and down the coast or hiking up and down the coast. And you just squeeze into a couple, two little campsites there. And it's a nice place to, share stories with other people. And load up with water there, load up with water in old historic San Simeon. Oh, there's a liquor store on the way. And north of San Simeon, then you're into bluff tops and beaches and some road. They're finishing the new coastal trail, California Coastal Trail. There are a couple miles of it running north near the lighthouse of one of the sea elephant viewing areas. And then you pretty much, even though it's state property, you pretty much have to stay on the trail till you hit San Carpoforo. And at San Carpoforo, I've answered the often asked question, so how do you get up that mountain? Where's the trail? And thanks to Justin Kennedy's cue on it, you'll find out how to find that trail right off the highway. So that's it, going up through that area. There are a lot of hotels that are in the new San Simeon area, but they're not very accommodating to hikers. I mean, they're for people who want to go to Hearst Castle. Oh, by the way, you go to Hearst Castle. You can walk in, you can leave your gear there. They'll take it right at the counter, and they'll put you on the next bus available.
That sounds quite a detour. We've got a question from Tom about your clothing choices that worked for you for both lightweight hiking and brush busting. Did you have a 64-40 parka? Did you have gloves, bandana, face covering? And have your choices changed based on your post-trail experience?
Yeah. In fact, they have. I wear the standard zip off pants, but I don't ever zip them off. So, REI cool, whatever's lightweight. They seem to be sturdy enough that you'll get slapped in the shin a number of times and you'll be bleeding in your lower legs eventually because you're going through a lot of sticks and things, but they'll protect your skin enough. I like to wear a nylon shirt. Now, I'm not hiking in 90-degree weather, and nylon is not a lot of fun in 80, 90-degree weather, but I think it's good and sturdy, and I can use it as protection against all the brush that I'm rushing against. And then I use a rain shell, just a real standard rain shell, and that's it for clothing. I've got an extra pair of socks. I've got a dry bag that has long underwear, and it's always going to stay dry. My Salomon hiking shoes, my trail runners, I have changed because I've discovered in summer hikes that there are a lot of little stickers, foxtail type, out there. And well, I just sag my pants and I don't bother with, I picked up a pair of Dirty Girl gaiters too. Just real lightweight, small gaiters right for the top of my shoes. But I went to a shoe that has less of a mesh on it. And I learned early on trails that you don't want Gore-Tex. If it rains, then your shoes are full of water and they don't dry out. You want a mesh shoe, but I like a mesh that's not quite so open so that the stickers don't work their way through quite as easy. And then in the gloves, in the pockets of my rain shell, I'll keep a pair of glove liners, and I'll keep a real lightweight 2-ounce fleece cap. And I will wear a hat for sun protection. And I can't think of anything else. I don't think there is anything else. I do take for nighttime. I take a one of the little puffy shells. Can't think of anything else beyond that, though. And sometimes I'll wear that shell in the morning as well, but most of my life is around having just one shirt and one rain shell. And by closing in the hood, you block a lot more wind. You gain a lot of warmth just doing that. By having a shirt that buttons instead of t-shirt or long sleeve t-shirt type, you can unbutton the thing. You can get a lot colder. But I'm not into layers. Yeah.
Tom also wants to know, what was your total water carrying capacity, whether you were carrying it or not for your hike?
Right. I'm one of these people who likes to take a 3-liter bladder that I could just sip out of all day long. And then at night, well, ideally, I'll take 2 Gatorade bottles, 1-quart Gatorade bottles. And when I get to a stream, something like 10 o'clock in the morning, then I'll slam a quart of water. I'll go through a good 1.5 gallons of water every day. And I don't cook, so I don't have a stove. I just use my Gatorade bottles as my cooking mechanism. For instance, I'll take the old Lipton noodle soup. I'll pour that in a Gatorade bottle with a little bit of water, and well, half an hour later, it'll plump up enough to drink. So you've got soup. I'll take a lot of powders in the morning. I'll take protein powder, a little bit of instant milk, Nido instant milk that's full fat, maybe even some instant coffee, just in a little bag, and I'll put it in my quart Gatorade bottle, and I'll have breakfast along with 2 granola bars. So it's not fancy. I'm not out there to eat. I'm out there to fuel myself and eat wisely. I start in on trail mix. About 10 o'clock in the morning, you go through a lot of trail mix, but they're all different. One may be raisins, the other may have cherries in it the next day, then the other may have cranberries in it the next day. And for lunch, I won't buy foods that don't give me a lot of calories. And it's hard to even get jerkies that have a lot of calories, but I'll do a turkey jerky or something. And fruit, if you can get freeze-dried foods like beets or something that have a lot of fiber, they won't turn to powder like berries do, freeze-dried berries. So I'll go out looking for those things in advance. And I always have the mashed potato mix as a backup, so that at night, if I'm still hungry at night, I'm usually not, I've been eating all day long, but if I'm still hungry at night, then I'll just open the mashed potato mix and pour a little water and eat my way down until it gets dry, and then repackage it and put it away till I need it 3 days later.
Awesome tips. Love to hear these. Couple questions about kind of like the officialness of the trail. What do you think it will take to make the Condor Trail an official long distance trail?
Well, as you may know, there's legislation proposed. In fact, it passed the House to make it a national recreation trail. The chances in the Senate are not very good right now, but I suppose at some point there will be more recognition. I would think, and in fact, I'm hoping that something like this book and just Forest Service working with us so that they see, oh, more people are interested in this trail, will enhance the availability of it. In some places, I'm sort of ambivalent. Being a wilderness experience, I think, hey, it's just fine to follow this little canyon, then follow that canyon. But when we get to the mountainside and you need to get up over the mountain to go to Roque Camp up in the area that Brian Conant calls the Roque Triangle, where people have been losing things. And Brittany lost her phone there. I lost my maps there. Justin Kennedy said he lost something there. But to find our way up there, just a couple of trail markings would help, even though there's no trail. Some indicator that, yeah, you leave this canyon at this point and head up over that hill. So there are a couple markers that might help out in that.
Speaking of that topic, you've got other long distance hike under your belt, but would you recommend the Condor Trail for the less experienced?
Oh, I would. But that's if you want to experience a trail that's more of a wilderness trail. If you want the social experience, then go do the John Muir Trail. There are a lot of people out there. You can talk to them all the time. You camp with them. You see the same person a week later, or do the Appalachian Trail or the PCT. But those are long trails too. You might need 5.5 months to go do the Appalachian Trail. You might need longer for Pacific Crest and even longer for Continental Divide. So it's one of those trails that I think is doable. It's only a month of your life.
And what do you think is the biggest challenge someone would face attempting a Condor Trail through hike?
I think finding your way and finding water.
Great. For those who might want to section hike the Condor Trail, do you have any recommendations for a good intro section to start with?
I do. In fact, you might start with a 1 or 2 day loop right off of Highway 33, where you go up into Bear Canyon, you cross over into the National Forest and down into the Dick Smith Wilderness area. You come to Deal Junction, and beyond Deal Junction, you go into a canyon that just has amazing rock formations along the canyon, and it's quite beautiful. But if you wanted to get your feet wet, so to speak, you could go on up the Año Nuevo Creek from Deal Junction and explore going up in that direction. And give you some good idea of what it would be like just to follow a creek bed, or in fact, I think that's sort of a preferred route for me, to go up that creek and go way on up to Medulce rather than route around through Dry Canyon. But you have to be experienced at finding your own way. And you have, I guess the corollary is that you can't freak out about finding your own way. I mean, there's no path around, there's no trail, but there's a creek. And up above, there's a ridge. And those are the natural features that you would normally follow anyway.
Mm-hmm. What is the best time of year to through hike the Condor Trail?
I think spring. Late fall is good. After it started raining, you might go out, but wait until the trees have dropped their leaves, because sometimes the creeks don't flow until the trees don't need that water. So late spring. I've hiked in January, I've hiked in February. if there are big rains, then you risk some flooding and you might even have to turn around. But if you wait until May and do the trail then you're going to hit some dry sections. And if you hike in June and July, in fact, I was just down in the Alder Creek area above the Sespe a couple of weeks ago, and there is no water there. You know, I had to carry 5 quarts in, and after I was done exploring for the day and threw a tent up and thought, well, I better just lie down for the night here. I got up at 4 in the morning and made sure that I got out when I still had 2 quarts of water left. So summer is not a good time. Summer is a great time to go up in the Sierras.
Great answer. What section do you think of the Condor Trail needs the most trail work?
It's the section between Manzana Schoolhouse and Highway 166. But that said, I also think that's the most fun because you have to rely on your own resources.
Good to know. And one last question for you. Besides Amazon, is there anywhere else that folks can find the book to purchase?
You can get it at Amazon. REI's got a hold of me and they'll probably carry it. And LPFA may carry it. In fact, we may put it out at the visitor centers, both Wheeler Gorge and the one up at Big Sur, so that people could pick it up there, but it's not there yet. So far, it's just on Amazon. I'm sorry about the price. They said, oh, well, you're going to have to price it above $25 or you'll get zero profit from it. So I had to price it higher than that just to get a $2 profit. But I've got an audiobook too. I'm sorry, not an audiobook, an ebook, a Kindle ebook. And it's got the same material in it. It's really a photocopy of the whole trail guide, and that's under $10. And, you know, I wanted to put out a paperback for under $10, but it relies on shiny white paper because it has colored maps on it. You can't read that on you know, standard novel type paper. So you'll just have to go to Amazon for now.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to say, I put the Amazon link in the chat box, and thank you, Katie, for the reminder that the LPFA is a recipient of Amazon Smile. So if you
That's
use
right.
smile.amazon.com, you can choose the LPFA as a recipient, and your purchases will give a little bit back to us and the work that we do.
You know, I had a question here from my own audience about ticks.
There you go.
And I'd like to just comment on that. There are sections, especially in the spring, where you'll be hit with ticks. They'll land on you, 10 at a time, and you brush them all off, and then 3 steps later, you have another 6 on you, and it's sort of hit and miss. But I have become a believer in permethrin. So when I go out on the trail, I have already sprayed my pants and my shirt. In fact, you probably don't need to. I notice that they just get woozy and fall off. I mean, it's nerve control. They get woozy and fall off my pant legs, and none of them have ever even made it to the skin. So just use permethrin, put it on your clothing, don't spray it on yourself, but put it on your socks, put it on your pants, and maybe the lower part of your shirt, and you'll be fine. I've done the trail twice, didn't have any ticks on me the first time, didn't have any ticks on me the second time, even though I had plenty on my pants.
Great to know. One last question from Tom here. Does your book list bailout options, if there are any at all, or is the trail just that accessible most of the way?
It does. those are listed as supply options, where you can leave the trail and where someone could meet you, or you could go get a resupply. So it does have bailout options. But that said, there are places, for instance, that section between Manzana Schoolhouse and Highway 166, where you don't really have much of an option. You need to go the whole distance. You need to climb way up through Horse Gulch Canyon and then work your way up and down little canyons. There are some campgrounds. Brian may know this, but I've never driven into Brookside. I don't even know if it's available, or to Pine Flat. Brian, do you know?
Yes, yes. Under normal conditions, you can drive to Brookshire and Pine Flat.
Brookshire. Yeah, good. Thank you.
And it looks like we've got another question for you, Brian Conant. Are you working on a Condor Trail map?
Oh, no, I'm not working on a Condor Trail map. I'd love to.
And you got a sad face.
Yeah, Keith, you'll have to talk to my wife about that one.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, everyone, for being here tonight. Thank you so much, Brian, for such a great presentation. I know so many people have mentioned this in the chat box, but we hope that you continue giving these talks and sharing your stories, because they're phenomenal. And we're so excited to see you get this book out, and to help get it into the hands of all the folks who want to do this hike through the beautiful forest that we all love so much. So thank you so much for your time.
Kendra?
Yeah, well, one last thing, Brian. I just want to say congratulations. And on behalf of everyone who's worked on the Condor Trail, in particular, myself and Alan and Chris Danch, thank you for all you've done for the Condor Trail. This book is a long time in the making, and you've done it. So congrats. And yeah, look forward to much more good things ahead. And the yo-yo, I want to see you do the yo-yo up and back.
All right. Well, I want to thank you for the trail. You know, it was thanks to the maps that were on the Condor Trail website that I was able to load it and so easy to find my way. And by the way, if anyone has any more questions, send me an email. I'm at bsarviscondortrail@gmail.
Awesome. Fantastic.
I'm sorry, bsarvis.condortrail@gmail. You are quick.
There we go. The correct email's in there. And of course, if anyone has follow-up questions, you can always email us, info@lpforest.org. And we just also want to make one last plug. Hike Los Padres is a great resource for looking at trail conditions, and helping you find water sources and all that stuff. So we are going to be doing updates there as well in the coming months.
I'm glad you said that, because that is I was going to put in the same plug for Hike Los Padres. It's a great place to find the most recent water conditions. And thank you everyone for tagging that and putting the information into that website so that others can see, oh yeah, I guess I can find water there. You know, as I resupply, I can check out streams. I can see whether they're in flood, whether there's any water at all. You know, I can drive around the whole 400-mile route and see what's there. But it's pretty nice to be able to look it up on Hike Los Padres.
Definitely. Well, thanks again, everybody. We hope you have a great rest of your week. And even though we can't be out in the forest right now, we hope that this talk inspires you for future plans.
This was amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you to all of you. Incredible.
Thank you.
You guys.
Thanks so much. Good hiking.
Happy trails.
Thanks, Brian. It was great.
Sarah, excellent.
And
Good job, honey.
Hi. Hi, Ann.
Hi.
Hi, honey. Did you see your picture on the wall?
Yeah.
Yeah,
you are.
it was a long time ago.
that's
Look
very-
what's on our wall here.
Oh,
Cool.
Go.
Piru,
Hey.
421
Sweet.
miles.
Wow.
All right. Have a good night, everybody.
Thank
Thanks.
you. Thank you, Kendra.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.